So how you been? And it's not just what have you achieved, what have you done? No,
Right.
how have you been? And over here, when somebody says how have you been, the default is just to go fine. Work's been
Same.
busy, family's good, and it's lies usually. We can't always have been fine, and yet we go fine. How are you? Fine. Pint, and they get a pint, and they sit down, and then they'll talk about football. we we do tend to find that it's the same over here than it is in most cultures that it's women that are attracted into the profession, and that's part of our culture, that women are
Mm,
cultured to be more caring, and
right.
men seem to be in a culture that is more, dare I say it, toxic. I think is probably fair to say. There is an element of toxicity to being a man. I mean, it's getting better. The
Mm,
next generation of boys becoming men, I think, are going to be a little bit more in touch with how they feel, and it's not just going to
yeah.
be about aggression. Uh, Certainly, I've noticed that adult men coming into me for therapy, because men are saying, "Oh, I didn't want to go and see a woman about this."
Right. Right.
And because of that, they're trying to find a male therapist, and there are so few of them. It's probably like it's a fifth, maybe a sixth. I think for every six women therapists, there's probably one man on the registers. So it's, if you want a male therapist, it is pretty hard, because likely they've probably not got any space, because they're all full of the diaries are already full of men needing male therapists. But they are
Right.
they are coming in saying, aged 50, I've never explored how I feel before. I've only ever had two emotions on my list: anger
Mm,
and bravado, and that's it. They don't understand what it felt like to be rejected. They just felt angry. They didn't know what it felt
right.
to be belittled. They just felt angry. Or guilty. They just felt angry. And they're trying to figure that out in their 50s, when they've had a lifetime of only feeling angry. And if they feel good, yeah, then there's some bravado, there's some pride of look what they've achieved. Well, there's a
Right.
hell of a lot more going on to being a human. I don't find that necessarily the case with women when they come for therapy, but the men I certainly do. And I think the more male therapists there are, that not just, actually, no, not just therapists, but just the more men there are, that when they do sit round a table in a pub with their friends, that they do have a conversation that says, "So how you been?" And it's not just what have you achieved, what have you done? No,
Right.
how have you been? And over here, when somebody says how have you been, the default is just to go fine. Work's been
Same.
busy, family's good, and it's lies usually. We can't always have been fine, and yet we go fine. How are you? Fine. Pint, and they get a pint, and they sit down, and then they'll talk about football.
And then we just keep it going. I gotta I want to throw something in there real quick because one of my clients says this a lot, and I always kind of I laugh a little bit, but then I challenge him immediately. He'll say he used the term solid, like, "Hey, how are you doing today?" He's like, "I'm solid, everything's solid." And every
Hmm.
time I ask him, I was like, "What does that mean when you say that?"
Mm.
Like, I don't even if somebody said I'm fine, like, what do you mean by fine? What does good mean? I'm very big on like defining your terms. What does that actually mean when you say that? And then when you
Yeah.
force them, when you throw it back to them, they're like, "Oh, uh, I mean, I guess I'm doing okay, but this, and this happened, and that was kind of a challenge, and I just struggle a little bit. But I mean, I guess I'm okay because I'm still here and I'm talking to you." Like, okay,
Mm.
it gives a little more context, right, to your point, not
Yeah.
just one word answer, two-word answer. Let's move forward, but we're never allowing for ourselves to be more expressive,
Mm.
right? Is that sort of where you're getting at there?
Absolutely. It's not in. It's not in male culture to do that. Women will. They'll sit and cry with each other if they have to,
Absolutely.
and they'll support each other. Uh, Men just don't do that. Really don't. They wouldn't know how yet. And like I
Yeah,
say, I think it's going to get better with the next generation.
I agree.
But the idea that you could be sitting with a friend in a bar, and it's not because they've been drinking, but they've got something to talk about, and their eyes fill up with tears, and and rather than their friends go, "Whoa, I don't know what, how do we handle this?" Instead, they lean forward and go, "It's all right. It's all right. Tell us about it, mate. What's going on?" For them to go, "Oh God, right, okay," and they get upset and they have a good cry.
Yeah.
The idea of men doing that is just unthinkable, absolutely unthinkable. And it, but why? We're both human. Whether we're male or female, we're both human. We're both
Yes.
feeling something.
Yes.
It's so toxic to not admit that. And it is, I think, about vulnerability. There is that
Yes.
toxic masculinity that says, if I show you I'm vulnerable, well, that means I'm the weak one, then you could dominate me. And
Yeah. We get
come
back
on,
to power. Get back to power.
we're not living in the Stone Age, you know? Grow up.
Agreed.
Come on, we
No,
can do this.
I'm with you, man. I'm with you. I believe that it starts with us, making that space feel comfortable. Like you said, having like a close support system that you feel like you can go to and you can talk to them about things that you're struggling with.
Mm,
And that we have to affirm each other and validate each other when we do choose to open up. What I usually say, because I agree with everything you said, like I believe that things can get better and that they will get better with the subsequent generations. What I do say, I think that makes it challenging for us and that I admire about women is the support
mm,
that they provide to each other. And I challenge a lot of us as men to observe them in the way that they behave. When one of them gets down and they sort of rally around them
yeah.
to like
Could be
insulate them,
complete
like give further
strangers.
support. Right. You just see it and you're like, they need
Yeah.
help. Let me support. Instead of us, we just kind of take a step back and just observe that person fall apart, break down, what have you. I'm very big on environment. To me, the vast majority of the expressions that we have, the lived experiences that we have, shape our perception and our reality, which then can have a significant impact in the way that we choose to express ourselves to others.
Mm,
So to me, when I think about like why men are the way that we are, that's always a question that I'm constantly wrestling with. A lot of it, in my experience, both personally and professionally, is the environments that we come up in, the expressions that are told to us very early on in our lives, when we try, when we cry, when we try to speak up, when we try to say things that are bothering us. And it can be in our family environment, it can be in our schooling environment, it could just be when we're walking around that people tell you to stop, to shut it down, shut it up, keep it to yourself, don't be a woman, don't be a girl, right? All these
yeah.
different phrases, man up, all these
Man
different
up.
phrases that they throw around, right? Specifically to us as a gender.
Yeah.
So to me, there's no shock, there's no surprise why we shut down, why when we get in relationships and your significant other is like, we need to talk about this, and we do everything to avoid it,
Oh,
literally
yeah.
everything to avoid it. Because I think about it like incompetence. If you don't know how to do something, if I ask you to go do something that an engineer would do, and you have no experience in doing that, what are you going to do? You're going to come with every excuse. You're going to run. You're going to avoid, because you don't want to have to show that you don't know what you're doing. You don't
Yeah.
want to, especially men, like you were saying earlier, like we don't want to have to demonstrate that. Like, I'm not sure. And when it comes to like emotional conversations, intelligence, the vocabulary, like you were discussing, a lot of times we don't have it
Mm,
because we get shut down for so long as young men. We're like, well, if my mom didn't care about what I thought or how I felt, if my dad didn't care about what I thought or how I felt, why would I think you would?
mm,
What would I possibly think that you would care? You didn't even make me. If the
yeah.
people that made me didn't care about it, why would you? And it can foster this very negative cycle
Yeah.
where we just all sort of collectively agree, not that we do, but in our minds, collectively agree men aren't to talk. We don't talk. We just provide. We provide financial stability. We provide physical safety and security. and that's about it. If you want to
Mm.
cry, you go drink a beer, go cry in the corner. Nobody really cares or wants to hear it. And I've tried very hard to challenge that, because I think that we know in the big picture, you and I know, especially as practitioners, that's very destructive. That's why so many of us are averse to therapy. That's why so many of us lose our marriages, lose our relationships, destroy our relationships with our children, or we pass along those same cycles of dysfunction onto them that they later have to go deal with.
Mm.
It's because we don't deal with that. But we also need the women in our lives and the women in society and people as a whole to make men feel comfortable to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we got to do our part. We need to do our part. If we need therapy, we need to go,
Mm.
so that we learn the ways to express ourselves, so we're not being aggressive, hostile, fighting, punching, drinking, whatever. Like, we're not doing those things.
Mm.
But we need the people in our society around us to also help promote that type of dialogue genuinely. Don't just say you want us to be this way, and then when we try to do it, you shut us down again, because you're just perpetuating the cycle that we
Yeah.
already are struggling with. I don't know what you would say to that.
Yeah, we certainly see it that there is an expectation that men are going to be stoic and they don't feel
Yeah.
any other emotion other than anger. And that's it. If women are expecting that of their partners, and deep down those women still want their partners to be vulnerable, they want them to be human,
Mm-hmm.
and yet there's going to be some element of criticism when they are, some judgment, even if it's just a sideways look.
Right.
That's all it takes for the man to go, I knew it. I knew it. And they're just shut down.
Yes, sir.
And we need to make eye contact with people.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be there for them. Uh, it, it, I know we've got a long way to go, and all we do is scratch the surface with every generation. It's like you say, man hands on misery to man, as the old poem goes. It just gets
Right.
passed down more and more. And we're either struggling with the effects of generational trauma,
Mm-hmm.
or we're being the ones carrying the burden of trying to stop it. And either way, it's hard, no matter
Yes, sir.
what. But if we can sit down and listen to each other, even if somebody says, I don't know what to say, it's okay to say, I don't know what to say. I wish I knew what to say, but I'm here for you. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
That's all we need to say sometimes.
Right.
I can only imagine what you're going through and how you feel. I'm here for you. I'm here for you. That's
Mm-hmm.
it. That's all people
Beautiful.
need.
Absolutely.